Hello, and welcome to Sonic Integrity,
part of Chorus America's 2020 virtual conference, Gala Track. I'm Lucio Maramba. Over the years, I've had the honor of producing audio and being sound designer for several choruses, including the Gay Men's Chorus of Los Angeles and the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus. I've worked on shows with over 700 singers with full orchestra to 7-person a cappella ensembles. As a longtime choral singer and instrumentalist, I'm thankful that I'm able to bring my musical experience and knowledge to the table, which informs how I approach audio for choruses in performances, rehearsals, and the recording studio. This session will attempt to demystify the sometimes intimidating aspects of amplifying choral audio, covering the best practices of choral sound design and live sound for groups of all sizes, ensuring sonic integrity to your audiences in any venue. From microphone types, mic placement, stage monitors to recording, we'll address some of the common audio issues that choral groups face. We'll also address collaboration with the venue's audio crew to optimize use of audio equipment for performances and rehearsals and get the most accurate audio reproduction of your group's sound possible. A note about amplification. By asking you to join me in this webinar, I feel it only fair to relay my philosophical approach to sound. In regards to choral singing, amplification may be seen as compromising artistic integrity at worst, or as a necessary evil at best. For me, living and working in both the choral world as a singer and in the theatrical world as a sound designer, I'd like to think there's a middle ground where amplification can enhance and lift choral singing in venues while still maintaining the art and substance of the human vocal performance. I know from experience that this is possible and obtainable. As a sound designer in the choral world, my goal is to have the amplification be as transparent as possible so the audience can experience the true sound of a chorus, regardless of where they're sitting in the venue in relation to the group. My hope is that regardless of where you stand on the issue of amplification in the choral world, you'll at least get a better understanding of the basic principles involved in implementing effective sound design in your choral performances. Before we continue, let's address the elephant in the room, COVID-19. First and foremost, thank you for joining this webinar. With a topic as experiential as amplified choral audio, being able to share the same space for this session would have been ideal. I look forward to a time where we can expand upon the topics covered in this webinar with in-person demonstrations. I thank you for still participating virtually and staying safe as well as protecting others wherever you are. We continue to navigate these uncertain times as the choral world deals with the COVID-19 pandemic repercussions and the halt on large gatherings. Although we are not currently able to perform for our audiences, we will eventually return to public performances. When we do, I hope these best practices will be of use to you and your groups. What is sonic integrity? First, let's talk about the concept of sonic identity. This is your group's unique or signature sound, your distinctive collective presence to your audience. Sonic identity goes beyond simply singing notes and rhythms correctly. It's your public-facing artistic proclamation. We pour our hearts and souls into rehearsing and becoming a cohesive ensemble with the goal of performing at our best for our audiences. We want our audiences to experience our sonic identity faithfully and accurately in whatever venue we perform. Sonic integrity is the true and accurate delivery of your group's sonic identity to your audience. You don't need to be a huge group or have a large budget to deliver amazing choral sound to your audiences. Yet, we often leave the delivery of our group's sonic identity in the hands of the venue, where investment in our group's unique sound is not a given. Every chorus deserves to have their sound come through clearly and accurately to their audience. In ideal circumstances, we shouldn't need to amplify choral singing at all. But unless we're performing in an intimate and acoustically favorable space, singing can be a challenge for both singers and the audience. Microphone types and polar patterns. Microphones are a necessity whenever we perform to large audiences, whether they're used just for archival recording, web streaming, or amplifying within the venue in real time. A microphone's inherent polar pattern dictates the direction or directions that a microphone will accept audio or reject it. So you'll want to choose mics based on the combination of the type and polar pattern. Most of the time, you're going to leave this up to your venue sound engineer, but it's important to know some of this stuff. Before we go forward, let's take a step back and talk a little bit about sound and how hearing works. We can hear sound because changes in air pressure vibrate our eardrums, and those vibrations are converted to signals that are interpreted as sound in our brains. Now, microphones work in a similar fashion, using a diaphragm instead of our eardrum, which then vibrates with incoming sound waves, and then the components behind the diaphragm convert those signals to sound. The way a microphone converts the signals determines the microphone type. For purposes of amplifying choral singing, we'll focus just on two specific mic types, dynamic mics and condenser mics. Each type has its own qualities, and choosing the right mic for the job at hand is vital in achieving great sounding choral audio. Dynamic microphones have a membrane or diaphragm within that vibrate in accordance with the incoming sound. The vibrating diaphragm moves an attached coil in an electromagnetic field created by a stationary magnet within, converting the incoming sound to electrical signals. The elements of a dynamic mic do not need external power, so that adds to their flexibility and durability in use on stage. Dynamic mics by design tend to be very robust and can handle very loud sound sources in close proximity. This is why dynamic mics tend to be the choice for live performances and for vocal soloists. Any application where the sound source is close to the mic or very loud. They tend to handle moisture well and can usually take a beating in regular use on stage. Dynamic mics can have various polar patterns, of which cardioid tends to be the most widely used in choral applications. Condenser mics also have a membrane, or diaphragm, that vibrates in accordance with incoming sound waves. But unlike dynamic mics, where the membrane is attached to a coil that moves through an electromagnetic field of a stationary magnet, the diaphragm of a condenser mic does not have a coil, but instead is free. But the diaphragm is charged with electricity. The electrified diaphragm vibrates relative to a stationary backplate, converting the vibrations to electrical signals. Since the diaphragm is charged with electricity, most condenser mics require external power to operate. This is often called phantom power. Now, condenser mics by design tend to be a little more sensitive and delicate relative to the robustness of dynamic mics. Condenser mics are best at capturing sonic detail and nuances from a sound source. Because of this, condenser mics tend to be the choice for recording in a controlled environment like a recording studio. Although I successfully use large condenser mics as overhead hanging mics for large choruses in live performance, as well as condenser mics in headsets for soloists too. Like dynamic mics, condenser mics can have various polar patterns, of which cardioid and omni tend to be the most widely used in choral applications. And now a demonstration between the dynamic mic, condenser mic on stand, and condenser mic on my headset. I'm going to read the same passage from The Lord of the Rings 3 times, once each through the different microphones. How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. Now that we know the basic differences between a dynamic mic and a condenser mic, let's talk polar patterns. One of the most important aspects to understand about microphones is how they pick up sound based on their inherent polar pattern. A microphone's inherent polar pattern dictates the direction or directions that that microphone will accept audio or reject it. You'll want to choose mics based on the combination of the type and the polar pattern. Now, usually you'll leave this decision up to your on-site sound engineer, but it's important for you to recognize the types so you can be part of the conversation. Relative to choral music applications, we'll focus on two specific polar patterns, cardioid and omni. Like the name implies, the cardioid polar pattern looks like a heart from above, emanating from the diaphragm of a mic. In 3 dimensions, the cardioid shape looks almost like a cone or a strawberry shape. The shape of the pattern indicates the directionality of the mic, meaning the optimal directions the mic will be able to pick up sound or reject it. Your sound source must be within range of the shape of the polar pattern in order for the mic to be able to pick it up. Because of its focus on picking up sound sources mainly from the front and partially from the sides, and rejecting off-axis sound from the sides and rear, cardioid polar patterns are frequently used in live stage performances for choral groups or soloists. Mics with cardioid polar patterns are great at picking up only the sounds within its polar pattern and rejecting off-axis sound, like noise from the audience or other instruments or floor monitors. The omnipolar pattern receives sound from all directions, as the name implies. The omnipolar pattern looks like a circle from above and a sphere in 3 dimensions, emanating from the diaphragm of the mic. The omnipolar pattern is great at picking up sound from all around and tends to be used a lot in headset mics or lavalier mics in performance. Since there's no rejection of sound from any direction, mics with omnipolar patterns are not used a lot in live performance except in headsets. In the recording studio, I've used mics with omnipolar patterns to capture a chorus in the round where the mic is in the center and the chorus surrounds the mic. We're going to demonstrate how the polar pattern of a microphone influences its directionality and the directions that it can capture sound. We're going to use a speaker playing a 450 hertz tone at the exact same volume and move this tone all around the microphone. You'll hear the differences based on where the sound source is in relation to the microphone, demonstrating the polar pattern of that specific microphone. And now a microphone with an omnipolar pattern and how it picks up sound. Here's a demonstration of a stereo pair of dynamic microphones with cardioid polar patterns. They're on stands, set apart as they normally would be in performance situation with your chorus. The sound source is 450 hertz, constant volume, and about 2 feet away from each of the microphones. We'll be moving around so you can get the sense of how each of the microphones in stereo picks up the sound source depending on their distance from the microphones. Here are some best practices to consider. The size of your group will inform which microphones to use and the placement of those mics relative to your singers. That's as simple as it gets. For small groups, let's say 25 or less, you can usually get great sound by simply using a pair of matched microphones for a stereo, left-right image. The benefit of using a stereo pair of mics on stands is the simplicity of the setup. And the mics will tend to pick up the same group blend that, let's say, your conductor is hearing when standing in front of the group. The width of the stereo image can be manipulated based on how far apart you place the left and right microphones. This can vary anywhere from 2 feet apart to 8 feet apart, depending on the width of the singers on your stage. The distance between the microphones and your group is typically no closer than 2 feet from the first row of singers. Work with the audio crew at your venue to get the placement just right for your group's position on stage. To avoid feedback, that nasty squealing sound in the PA, and give the audio crew the most gain to work with, you'll want the microphones to be placed as close to your group as possible, but you'll need to be very mindful of the placement of your singers in relation to those mics. The overall sound and blend of your group is more important than individual voices. Whenever possible, soloists should use dedicated mics for their solos anyway. Use your best judgment and tact when arranging your singers in relation to the mics. Place your most accomplished voices closer to the mics, and your not so accomplished singers further away. Loud or booming voices and voices that have challenges staying in tune should likewise not be placed directly in front of a mic. In the end, you're trying to accurately amplify the collective group sound to your audience via the mics. So take a listen and make adjustments on the fly to achieve the best blend for amplification. Medium groups. In theory, you can apply the same principles of mic placement from small groups to medium groups, let's say 25 to 50 singers, by increasing the number of mics across the front of the group. This widens the area picked up by the microphones, aiding in amplification. Large groups. In theory, you can apply the same principles of mic placement from small and medium groups to larger groups by again increasing the number of microphones. For large groups, 50 or more singers, you should consider employing hanging overhead mics, which will allow you to capture more of the group's sound and depth without the restrictions of having mics on stands limited to just the front of your group. Hanging microphones take more time and more expertise to hang, but it will also allow you to place mics across and within your group, something you can't easily do with mics on stands. Collaboration with venue sound crew. In my experience as an audio engineer, the sound crews at most venues welcome input and direction from the performing groups they're hosting. Ideally, there's a single point of contact, usually the choral director or someone designated by the choral director, who's the liaison between the choral group and the venue's sound team. You can make it a lot easier on your audio crew if you make sure they get directions from a single person. The easiest way to frustrate a venue's sound crew is to have them be subject to multiple, often conflicting opinions from different people in your group. Keep the lines of communication simple and direct with your venue's audio crew, and you'll be off to a good start. The communication can start well before you arrive at the venue. Ideally, you will identify and contact the venue's audio engineer and start a discussion. This can be as simple as letting the venue know how many sound sources on stage will need to be amplified. That means the number of people or voices and any instruments. Let them know if you have any soloists, duets, trios, small ensembles, etc. that will need dedicated microphones. Beyond the mics that will be used for amplifying the chorus, let them know if you are using backing tracks. This is very important. So they are prepared to handle that through the PA. As a sound engineer, this kind of information allows me to create my input list ahead of time and saves me a lot of headaches and frustrations from surprises when the group arrives at the venue. Based on your needs, your audio contact should be able to tell you if they have the necessary mics and other equipment to meet your needs. If not, there may be time to make adjustments on your end or the venue's to make things work. There's nothing worse than showing up at a venue and being told there are no mics for your soloists, or that they were not aware that they needed to mic your band. Most sound guys want to make performers happy, but can be frustrated if they feel they are surprised by requests on site with little to no time prior to performance. In live performance, there will always be room to make adjustments on the fly once your group is at the venue, but the idea is to minimize those modifications because of good preparation and communication beforehand. A rule of thumb from a sound engineer's perspective for live performance: it's easier not to use or mute a microphone that has already been set up in advance than it is to have to add a mic on the fly immediately prior to a performance. Stick to these basic practices when interacting with your sound crew, and you'll be off to a great start. Monitors and placement. On-stage monitors are speakers facing the performers. It's as simple as that. Typically, monitors are only really necessary when a group is singing with instrumentalists, let's say a piano, a band, or a full orchestra. So any instances where your singers need assistance in hearing the instruments they are singing with to stay in sync and stay in tune. If your singers are on a stage and your pianist or band is in an orchestra pit, you will most definitely need some sort of stage monitor for your singers so they can hear the accompaniment and stay in tune and in sync. When used properly, monitors can be a blessing to your chorus, allowing your singers to hear what they need to execute their side of the performance properly. The danger is putting too much volume or the wrong audio sources into the monitors, which can cause a feedback loop in the microphones you have on stage used to amplify your singers. Now, in my experience as a singer on stage, the number one instrument I need to hear to stay in sync and in tune is the piano, or whatever instrument is playing the main melodic line. Resist the urge to have your audio engineer put chorus vocals or drums or, quite frankly, any other instrument other than the piano in the stage monitors. That is a recipe for squealing feedback. And quite frankly, if your singers are complaining that they cannot hear themselves or others around them, they are most likely singing too loud or not practicing active hearing techniques in their surroundings. You will need to work closely with your venue's audio crew to get the balance of the stage monitors just right to avoid feedback, but still give your singers enough volume to perform properly. In practice, the sound sources heard through the monitors are a separate and completely different mix than what's being amplified to the audience. For example, the audience should be hearing a well-balanced mix of all sound sources from the stage in the house. So that's the chorus, vocals, soloists, plus any other instruments. But your stage monitors should only have the sound sources your singers absolutely need to hear to perform. Again, in my experience, this means the piano only, or whatever instruments are playing the melodic line to accompany your singers. In most cases, I would not add any vocal solos in the stage monitors at all, as this will most definitely increase your odds of creating a feedback loop through the vocal microphones. In very large venues, where the conductor is physically separated enough from the chorus where they cannot adequately hear the vocals, I will give the conductor a separate monitor and probably add some chorus vocals and soloists in the monitor mix. But this is a case-by-case basis and a call that will need to be made on site with the venue's sound crew. If your instrumentalists are physically distant from your singers and the stage vocal microphones, you may need to provide monitors for the instrumentalists as well. The instrumentalists may need or want vocals in their monitors, but be very mindful of any bleed that can make its way back to the stage vocal microphones, again, causing feedback. In my experience with live amplified choral audio performance, the placement and balance of stage monitors for singers and the instrumentalists is the most time-consuming but necessary step in ensuring a successful performance. It is tempting to gloss over this step, but if monitors are not placed and balanced correctly, and your singers cannot hear what they need to execute, their performance will absolutely suffer. If you're performing in a venue where you believe you will need stage monitors for your singers to hear the accompaniment properly, as a sound engineer, I recommend building in a monitor check, at least 5 minutes, where the venue's audio crew can place monitors properly and you can practice a piece with both vocals and instruments. This will allow your group to check levels in their monitors and provide comments or requests which you can use to fine-tune placement and volume levels with the audio crew. Taking just a few minutes to balance stage monitors will make a world of difference to your singers and to your audience. To continue our discussion on sonic integrity, I'm very happy to welcome my friend, Dr. Tim Seelig. Tim is a conductor, singer, teacher, and motivational speaker, and he's also the artistic director and conductor of the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus and the National LGBTQ Center for the Arts. He continues an extremely busy guest conducting and teaching schedule throughout the U.S. and across the globe. He's conductor emeritus of the Turtle Creek Chorale, which he conducted for 20 years, and served on the faculty at Southern Methodist University. Tim has also served on the board of Chorus America. Dr. Seelig holds 4 degrees, including the Doctor of Musical Arts from the University of North Texas and the diploma from the Mozarteum in Salzburg, Austria. He has authored 7 books and DVDs on choral technique. You've probably seen them, including the bestsellers The Perfect Blend and The Perfect Rehearsal, as well as The Perfect Choral Workbook, Quick Choral Fixes, and The Music Within. Tim's early training was actually as a singer, an opera singer, in fact. He made his European operatic debut at the Staatsoper in St. Gallen, Switzerland, and his solo recital debut at Carnegie Hall. Interesting facts include conducting the world's longest choral concert, per the Guinness Book of World Records, 20 hours. He also carried the Olympic torch as a community hero, although I've heard he hasn't run since. His recordings have been on Billboard Top 10 and iTunes Top 10 classical charts. His choruses have been on 3 documentaries, one receiving an Emmy Award for Best Documentary and another an Audience Favorite Award at its premiere at the Tribeca Film Festival in New York City. Tim Seelig, thank you for joining me. Really appreciate your taking the time.
It's my pleasure, and welcome, Chorus America family.
I'm going to start with a really broad question. So you're both a trained and experienced singer. You're also a renowned conductor. How has that informed your approach to your work in choral music, and what, if anything, has changed over the years?
Well, I think that, first of all, because I trained as an opera singer and actually was one of the lucky ones who got to be one, it gave me a different opinion or a backdrop on vocal technique. So I approached, when I first came to conducting at the Turtle Creek Chorale, I came to it as, well, we're just all a bunch of opera singers, right? And then I found out at the first rehearsal, no, we are not. And so some of that carried over into my teaching and the technique that I use with the chorus. And then some of it, of course, just went out because that doesn't really work. And you can't really make a choir. Nobody really wants a choir of opera singers. They really don't. Well, except the opera. And even sometimes that's questionable. So I think that's how I brought that forward into the choral arena.
Well, so let's now talk about audio and sonic integrity, speaking about the choral arena. So in the context of choral performance, I've heard people say music is sound, but not all sound is music. So when the audio at a concert is great, we're caught up in the moment, it can be transcendent and it should be transparent. But when the concert audio is bad, everyone knows, and it takes you out of the moment. So again, here's another broad question for you. Where do you stand on the amplification of choruses?
Part of my background that carries forward is, while I was being an opera singer, I was always a part-time minister of music in megachurches in the South. And so I would go from the opera stage where we were like, a microphone? How dare you ask if I need a microphone to sing over this Wagner orchestra? And then I would go to church where everything was amplified. So I was living in both worlds, and came to know early on with a very, very large choir at First Baptist Church of Houston, where I was serving, that amplification was necessary in a 4,000 seat auditorium. That's just the way that was. Right. But I had a really good background. It wasn't a shock to me when I got into full-time conducting that there might be amplification involved. So I let my snotty side go of like, no, I can't do that. And realized very early in my career that, yes, indeed, if we're going to perform in not perfect halls, which none of us actually has, quick. I did conduct for 19 years at the Meyerson Symphony Center in Dallas, Texas. Perfect hall.
Mm-hmm.
And we used amplification in the Meyerson.
Really?
I know. Hold on, people. One of my biggest revelations was moving into the perfect acoustic of the Morton H. Meyerson Symphony Center and then conducting there for about 19 of my 20 years. The settings for them is wet, wetter, and wettest.
Mm-hmm.
And I got in there and I was going, oh, and I was just bathing in that glorious sound. I just thought, this is amazing. We gave a couple of concerts and the people were like, oh my gosh, the sound is so beautiful. What language was that? And I thought, I actually wrote a book because of that, called The Language of Music, because I said, I'm so tired of hearing concerts where I don't know what they said. So they came to me, the audio folks came to me and said, we can add some top end tweaking to your chorus, not change the sound,
Sure.
but the audience will hear the consonants. And we were giving good consonant. We give good consonant. It just was getting soaked up.
Every space is different.
It's totally different. And it just so happened that this one was really, really beautiful and wet. And one of the things that for many of us, if not most, the most important thing for me where I live in my chorus and my chorus world is the delivery of the text. And if you're not doing that, it doesn't matter how beautiful or what kind of bath you want to take in the sound you're creating if the audience doesn't understand what you're singing. And for me, that was the end of that. And from then on, I'm like, if this makes my audience understand me better, I'm in. And that was that.
Well, and you bring up a good point too, is as singers on stage and as a conductor, we obviously have lived with this music and for a while, right? And it's easy for us to be lulled into this belief that because we know the music so well, it's going to come across the same way to the audience, right? But the reality is, our audiences may be hearing what we're singing for the first time, and we can't assume that they're going to get every single consonant and understand every single piece of text. And
Correct.
So finding that balance between your execution on stage and, in your case, working with the technical crew to try and figure out and make sure that that comes across correctly to the audience makes a world of difference.
Yeah, and I'll tell you folks out there, if you get a really good audio engineer and you do all the things that Lucio has taught you, you get to this point and they will understand every word. And then you don't have to lead into a song by saying the next song is about, or lead out of a song and say, now that song was about. All that goes away because guess what? Your audience heard it and understood it. It's worth it. When we would move, obviously we move a lot of places. Those were just the large concerts in a year, and we would sing maybe 40 places in a year in our outreach. And one of the things that it's really hard to get amateurs, in the best sense of the word, to understand that when I'm in the rehearsal hall, regardless of the acoustic, this is the way I want you to sing.
Yeah.
The sound may not be what you think it should be, but I'm the arbiter of that. Mm-hmm. And I will get you in that hall, be it dry, wet, or whatever, the way I will get you singing with beautiful technique and all of the things that we want. And then we're going to take that over and we're going to move it over to the Meyerson, and it's going to be the same. And then we're going to go sing in some school gym, and it's going to be the same. It's really hard for amateur singers not to think they're responsible for adjusting their sound for every different acoustic. And that's the worst possible thing that can happen because, well, everything goes awry. And that's where really good amplification comes in.
Right. Well, you just read my mind, because my next question was going to be, you work with choruses for weeks and months on music, right? You work on their diction, you work on execution in the rehearsal space. And then often you move into your performance venue. Sometimes you have hours, maybe even just minutes before your chorus, who's been rehearsing for weeks and months in a certain acoustic space, now has to perform in sometimes a completely different one. So you started to talk about it, but when you work with groups in situations like that, how do you help them transition from the rehearsal hall, from one acoustic to the performance venue? And what are the do's and don'ts? I'd love to hear some of your experience with working with singers and helping them overcome that challenge.
Well, I love that. I love the question, and we don't have enough time for the whole thing. But I teach, as many of us, if not all of us do, a very physical production, and it's kinesthetic, and we have muscle memory. And when I get it right, when it's those moments when you can't help but have the chill bumps, I go, okay, that was lovely. What did it feel like? How did we get there? What did that feel like for you in the context of the larger group? And then we're going to just move that. And immediately at a new venue, which we have been many, certainly our gala festivals, they give you 25 minutes on, off, all of it. Oh, yeah. And you've got to do that. So I absolutely, every time will go back and say, okay, you remember what you were doing when I said, yes, that's good. Mm-hmm. Remember that and do it. Don't adjust, because every situation, one of the other things is, well, don't worry about, you can't worry about what's going past the footlights, as we say. Right. That's for us to worry. You create this sound and we'll worry about that. And that's when great technicians come, not handy, but necessary to doing what we do. I will say that for me, and Lucio knows this because he's amplified my ensembles and my group before, I have a very bottom-up ear. I started playing the string bass, for God's sake. I think Mom knew that. And then I was a bass baritone, and I hear that. Yes. And so I need this EQ. I need to have the foundation heard. And I will say that today's pop music is all up in here.
It's the opposite.
They're just tenors and tenors and tenors. I'm so sick of tenors. And so when the EQ comes, I will walk into a hall, walk to the sound guy and go, hi. Let me tell you my aesthetic for what I think a beautiful sound is. And I explain that, and they're like, oh, great. Thanks for telling me what you like. And then I get that beautiful warm sound without going through my 23 minutes of a 25-minute rehearsal, just fighting this thing and then going and telling him, and then we don't have time to test it. Right. So that's one of the things that I do up front and make sure everybody knows this is the sound in my head. I think one of the things that we do with choirs is we have this beautiful sound in our head, and we don't know exactly how to tell them. That's why we choral directors and voice teachers just make up stuff of trying to get that sound in their ear. And the only way to do that is to create that sound and then say, that was it. That may have felt completely wrong to you, but that's the one. And the same thing is true of audio engineers. I have to tell them, this is the sound I have in my ear. I will say that there have been times when I've gone to a new hall and I've taken a recording of either the Turtle Creek Chorale from postcards, one of those from the reference recordings, or one of the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus recordings, and said, will you listen to 15 minutes of this? This is what I love. When we've recorded most recently at Skywalker Sound, which is where we do most of our recordings, I go in, and if it's new technician other than Leslie Ann, I say, hey, listen to this recording because this is what's in my head. Right. They are so grateful. So if you're going to a new hall, new sound people, take a recording of your chorus or a different chorus that you love and say, listen to this for 15 minutes, and it will clear up 90% of the questions in communication.
And that's exactly, one of the things that I talk about in this webinar, and that is, a lot of times we walk into a venue as a choral group, and there's almost, without any justification, this, assumed antagonistic relationship between the talent coming in and those who run the sound. And in reality, from a sound person's standpoint, we want nothing more than to please the artist. Some sound folks can be prickly, of course. They're different personalities. But what you said is so true. If every time I worked with a new group, I had the ability to either research their sound or have them come up to me and say, this is what we want to sound like, it would cut so much time from setup and from execution, because in the end, the sound guys want to make the performers happy and make the audience happy. I think most of us who work behind the scenes in theater, we have this urge to please people. It may not seem that way, but why else would we want to work in live performance but wear all black and hide behind the scenes? We still want to do a good job. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think if you're in a situation where you are working with a new crew, it does help, right, to reach out beforehand. Giving them a recording, for instance, is a great example. I would love that. So definitely food for thought. I wanted to switch gears now. We're all stuck at home right now. So one of the things I wanted to just quickly check in with you about was recorded audio. So I don't think I prepared you for this question, but I've had the honor of producing the audiobook version of your memoir, The Tale of Two Tims, Big Old Baptist, Big Old Gay, and I'm really happy with the results. I hope you are too.
I am.
I bring this up because the process of the recording this audiobook was interesting, to say the least, in that, unlike normal recording sessions, we couldn't be in the same studio together. In fact, we had to figure out a way that you could record yourself at home or wherever you were at the time. And we went back and forth a lot to get things just right. So I was just wondering, have you done anything like this before? And what was your experience like recording yourself at home?
Well, I think we're all in the middle of this as we speak of, okay, we're doing Zooms. We're going to try to teach our choir via Zoom. Do I really need an external microphone? Do I need that? I mean, all that stuff. And the answer is mostly no, because technology is so great and you're hearing my voice beautifully. That said, it's very different when you're recording something for a presentation or for a live audience.
Yes.
And the interesting thing about the audio book was I was moving around. I was conducting here or moving there, and then I was at home, and we recorded it in different rooms.
You were in different venues recording.
I was, and then all of a sudden, Lucio is challenged to make it all sound like I had been in his studio and recorded the whole thing, and it is masterful. I mean, you cannot tell that I was bouncing around here and there. It's really amazing. Again, as Lucio instructed me, just be yourself, speak as you would, don't change. Microphones here. Just rest in the fact that it's going to be okay because you're putting yourselves in the hands of a professional. So I would say that whether it's the book, the audio book, or my chorus, if you get what you pay for, folks, just remember that. And if you're going to work so hard on your chorus and the music and the presentation, and then you go, yeah, and I got $59 left for the audio engineer, then you get what you paid for and what you deserved. So in whatever budget you have, halls will absolutely allow you to bring your own person in. I would say, even with someone like Lucio, make sure you have some ears in the hall during your dress rehearsal. Right. Someone you trust, someone who knows what you're looking for. It doesn't have to be a choir member. It doesn't have to be a professional. It can be someone who knows the sound that you're looking for, be sitting there taking some notes, and that will fix it. Right. I think that I also wanted to just bring up briefly that one of the reasons I went to amplification is for balance. And boy, is it tricky. We have various instrumental components to our chorus. And what we'd love to have is the soloist and the instruments and the chorus all come out like we're listening to a beautifully balanced recording. Right. Well, it's not going to happen. And unfortunately, people are like, but I like your recording, and I'm like, okay, fine, go away. So that's when I really realized that the soloist that you might have walking to a microphone is going to blow out the chorus when they come in. So that's got to be adjusted, which most audio people don't get. They're like, yay, bring on the solo. And then the choir is like, off in the North 40. And then if you have acoustic instruments, great. We have a chance. When you add either drums, which can wipe out an entire tenor section, or brass, or electronic instruments, everything changes. So just know that everything changes, and you can't just bury your head in the sand and go, it'll all come out in the wash, as my mama used to say. It won't come out in the wash. You're going to come out dirty. So be really careful and cognizant of the various components that you're adding to your performance.
And you bring up a good point, and that is be involved with the venue sound people, right? Not only do they want and will appreciate your feedback as the artist, but they will take direction. If you don't get involved with your sound folks, you are literally just abdicating your responsibility to your sonic identity, right? To what's going to be presented. So I think we should all feel empowered as performers to collaborate with the people at the venue, whoever it is, to bring out your sonic identity and maintain your sonic integrity.
I love those words that I'm gonna say you invented them. We all think that our chorus needs us every moment. They need every nuance that we have right here, and it's so not the truth. So when you're in a hall such as that, start them, and then walk out in the hall and listen for yourself.
I've seen you do that many times.
Many times. I'm like, no, I want to hear this for myself. I know I have an assistant out there or a friend, but I want to hear it myself. And the great thing is you get to hear the sound. And the sad thing is you realize they didn't need you as much as you thought or hoped they did.
Because you prepared them so well.
Exactly. So I absolutely recommend you being your own audio person by going out and listening.
Great. Tim Seelig, thank you so much for taking the time to add to our discussion on sonic integrity. It's always great to talk with you and to see you.
Thank you, Lucio.
Recording a live performance can be as simple as asking your audio crew to provide an audio output for a recording device you provide, or something they already have at the venue. It's common for larger venues to have some sort of ability to record audio to CDR or MP3 for the guest artists. Some venues may also be able to provide archival video and audio too. Check with the venue's audio crew ahead of time, ideally during your initial conversations about microphone needs and monitors prior to arriving at the venue. Some venues charge for archival recordings, so ask about it far in advance to help you avoid any surprises down the road. Some venues have recording stipulations in their rental contracts, so make sure you check that as well. And for future performances, if archival audio recording is a must for your group, you may want to work in some sort of archival recording requirement into the rental contract. If your venue does not have the ability to provide an archival recording, you have a little more work to do. Assuming making an archival recording is allowed by the venue, check with them first, you can consider designating a mobile device such as a phone or a tablet as a recorder and find an optimal location in the venue to safely and securely place that device for recording. In a pinch, the built-in mic and voice memo app on your mobile device or tablet will be able to provide a decent recording. But there are, of course, external mics that can be purchased to augment your device's built-in mic if you're willing to spend the time to research and spend the money. If you're lucky enough to be able to record your group in a studio setting, you'll have a lot more options available. Recording studios, their personnel and equipment can vary wildly. So instead of getting too detailed, I'll just stick to the broad strokes. Recording your group in a studio is very similar to the experience performing in a venue. There'll be microphones placed in front or above your group, and the mic types and polar patterns will be chosen to match the material at hand. Lean on your recording engineer for their expertise. This is their job. Instead of stage monitors, your singers should have access to headsets to hear any accompaniment discreetly in their ears, not out loud, without having that accompaniment bleed into the vocal recording mics. In some cases, you may want to record with your instrumentalist at the same time in the same room, in which case your studio engineers will take care in placement of people and mics to achieve an optimal balance for recording. You'll notice that a lot of the same principles in live performance audio apply to the recording studio too. Specifically, choosing the right mic types and placement, making sure vocal microphones are not compromised by other sources that will cause feedback, and providing the singers with the reference audio they need to perform at their best. Performance-wise, your group should be as prepared as possible to perform in the recording studio, just as prepared as they would be performing live on stage. A great recording starts with great raw material. And as advanced as technology is nowadays, you want to avoid having to artificially tune or alter your recordings after the fact any more than necessary, which typically incur additional time and expense by the studio anyway. Just like live audio at a venue, there should be a single point of contact who's the liaison between the choral group and the recording engineer. This can be the group's director or conductor, or a designated audio producer for your group. The recording crew will appreciate it immensely if you make sure that they get directions from a single person and not be subject to multiple directions from different people in your group. Every studio is different, but if you remain aware of these best practices, you should set your group up for a smoother recording studio experience. The need to amplify audio during rehearsals will, of course, depend on the size of your group and your rehearsal space. There's also a cost of equipment to consider. So unless your group is 100 or more singers, you probably don't need to give your conductor a microphone or amplify your piano accompaniment. After all, part of a choral singer's skill set should be the ability to actively listen to their surrounding, singers and instruments, and balance accordingly. Now, for large groups, let's say 100 or more, if possible, I do recommend setting up at least one speaker and giving your director a microphone so they can be heard more easily by the entire group. Amplifying the director's voice also alleviates the need to raise their voice or scream, which most directors I know appreciate immensely. The thought of having to compete with the volume and intensity of 100 or more voices over the course of an entire rehearsal is a daunting task without amplification. While a simple dynamic wired mic on a stand will suffice, I recommend considering upgrading to a headset mic, wired or wireless, for your director. This will free their hands to conduct as normal, and they will not have to worry about reaching for a mic on a stand or giving up a hand by holding a mic. In situations where I've handled rehearsal audio for groups of 200 or 300 singers, amplifying both the conductor and the piano is an absolute necessity in order to make the rehearsal possible. To add to our discussion about sonic integrity, I'm very happy to welcome my friend Gavin Thrasher. Gavin is the artistic director of the New York City Gay Men's Chorus. Prior to that, he was the assistant conductor and then interim artistic director at the Gay Men's Chorus of Los Angeles, where I had the honor of singing with him and serving as audio producer. Now, at GMCLA, Gavin also founded and directed their small a cappella ensemble Aftershock, where I also had the honor of singing with him and producing audio. So in addition to his choral directing experience, Gavin is also a very experienced youth outreach coordinator and advocate. During his tenure at GMCLA, he founded 2 new youth programs, providing music education to juveniles in LA County probation system halls and camps, and offering semester-long choral and vocal music education to Los Angeles schools. Gavin expanded upon GMCLA's Alive Music Project, bringing the course into schools, sharing stories, and making connections with students. He's presented his work on GMCLA youth programs internationally and shared his expertise on youth music education at various choral symposiums. Gavin holds a Bachelor of Music Performance degree from the University of Redlands in California and a Master of Music degree from the University of Southern California. Welcome, Gavin, to our Sonic Integrity webinar. I'm just going to jump right in and ask you about your rehearsals.
Yes.
You conduct a chorus of hundreds of singers in your rehearsal space. I'm wondering, how do you deal with that many voices, and how do you make sure that individuals all the way in the back row can actually hear you during your rehearsals?
Yes, this is a great question, because I've had a couple of rehearsals where I didn't have amplification, and 2 things happened. One, everyone had a much harder time hearing me, so it was a much less productive rehearsal. 2, no matter how much I used my proper support and vocal technique, my voice was still gone by 3/4 of the way through. There's no way around that. So we use amplification. We've changed kind of what we use lately, but I use wireless headset microphone with the wireless receiver that then plugs into, used to be kind of a PA amp system. Now we've found this more compact. It's still a PA. It's just more compact and more portable because it's newer technology that I then can EQ from my phone, which is really helpful. I found, because I don't at my current rehearsals, I don't have someone who's running the audio, so I'm running it myself. So having that EQ on my phone is very helpful. But we do use a PA system. That's what we use. It's really important though. I've especially when we have like weekend retreats, there's been a couple where for some reason it didn't work, or there wasn't power in the right spot, or it didn't make it. We're in New York, so transportation things are not, it has to be solved for. Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. I wanted to ask you about the boom in virtual choruses ever since shelter in place has happened. What do you think of virtual choruses? It's not the same as singing together, obviously, but since we can't, it seems to be the next best thing.
I have a lot of thoughts on it. I'm going to try not to get emotional, but our community is hurting. Are those of us who are choral musicians who chose to make this our life, or who are members of these choruses who choose to dedicate hours of rehearsal time to do this, they do it because they love it, and they do it because of the community it brings and the connection it brings with their fellow chorus members. And we all know that there's no substitute for singing live together. There just isn't, because there's a connection and a communication that happens when you're singing with a group of people, whether it's 2 or 4 or 35 or 50 or 200. There's an unconscious connection that you can't replicate. And virtual chorus is not going to replace that. And we all know it, but we all need something. We can't just stop, because we need to keep creating, because so that the choral music, there's the aspect of community, and we all know that. There's the aspect of that live singing together is the reason to do it. So many of us say, and including me, say the rehearsal process is my favorite part. I love the performance. There's a rush from that, but the rehearsal process is what's really fulfilling for so many of us, and we don't get that. But there's also an aspect that we're all in this because we want to create something together. And I think virtual chorus is one of the ways in which we can do that. And I think we're all desperately searching for other ways too as well, because it's missing so much of what choral music is at its core. So I think as soon as we can rehearse together again, I think people are going to be like, okay, that's good. We had those. Now let's just do this live, right? I don't think it's necessarily. I think it's a really interesting and cool way to create music when there isn't another way to, or when you want to in the future connect people who are geographically unable to perform together otherwise. It does have a space in normal choral, time. Choral music does have a space, but I think for our choruses that would normally rehearse together live, once we can come back together, it's going to be very emotional. And I think the virtual chorus part of that will not necessarily be something we do anymore as often once we do that. But I'm very thankful for the technology that exists and the audio technology that exists in terms of digital audio workstations and professionals who are willing to do the work of mixing it, because otherwise I don't know what our art form will be doing right now. So I think it's extremely important that it exists, but we all know it's just the best we can do and a poor substitute, but there's nothing that can replicate what we do normally.
Gavin, thank you for taking the time to add to our discussion on sonic integrity. It's great seeing you and talk with you.
It's great to see and talk with you too, Lucio. Thank you for having me.
Performing and listening to choral music in a venue with a great acoustic is sublime. There's nothing like it. But if amplification is required, sonic integrity should be our goal for our audience. As choral directors or singers, familiarity with microphone types and polar patterns will help give us a sense of how amplification works. It'll allow you to collaborate with the venue's audio crew and to determine the best strategy to amplify your group sound, your sonic identity. Now that you understand some of the best practices of microphone choice, microphone placement, monitor usage, and how to interact with your audio crew, I hope you feel a little more comfortable with the amplification of your group in performance. I'd like to leave you with this one thought. Music is sound, but not all sound is music. Sonic integrity in our amplified performances is the goal. I'm Lucio Maramba. Thank you for joining me for Sonic Integrity. Good luck.